14-year-old Marcus is scavenging behind a warehouse when he hears muffled crying from a rusted van. Inside, 10-year-old Lily, bound, gagged, tears streaming down her face, left to suffocate in the summer heat. He kicks open the door, cuts her loose. She gasps 2 words through sobs. "My daddy, Reaper." Marcus freezes. Reaper, top enforcer of the Hells Angels. This little girl is bait in a gang war, and the men who took her are coming back to finish what they started. He pulls her out just as engines roar in the distance. They run. But what Marcus doesn't know is that saving Reaper's daughter just put him in the crosshairs of the deadliest biker in the state. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are watching from in the comments. Enjoy the story. 14-year-old Marcus had learned 3 rules for surviving on the streets of Riverside, California. Stay invisible, trust nobody, and never get involved in other people's problems. For 2 years, those rules had kept him alive after his mother overdosed and the foster system labeled him a runner. But on this scorching August afternoon, crouched behind a dumpster in the abandoned industrial district near the freeway, those rules were about to get shattered. The sound hit him first, a child's muffled screaming coming from inside a rusted white van parked in the shadows of a condemned warehouse. Marcus froze, his fingers still gripping the cardboard box he'd been tearing apart for tonight's sleeping mat. Every instinct told him to walk away, to pretend he heard nothing, to survive another day by minding his own business like he always did. But that sound, that desperate, terrified crying that only a child could make. Marcus's hand started shaking before he even stood up. He approached the van slowly, his heart hammering so hard he could feel it in his throat. The vehicle looked like it had been abandoned for years, paint peeling, tires flat, windows caked with grime. But through a crack in the back window, he saw her. A little girl, maybe 10 years old, bound with zip ties, gagged with a filthy rag. Her face was flushed bright red from the heat, sweat soaking through her torn pink t-shirt. Her eyes, wide, terrified, pleading, locked onto his through the glass. Marcus grabbed the door handle and pulled. Locked. He pulled harder, his fingers slipping on the hot metal. The girl's muffled screams grew more frantic, her small body thrashing against the restraints. The temperature inside that metal tomb had to be over 120 degrees. She was dying. "Hold on," Marcus whispered, knowing she couldn't hear him. "Just hold on." He scanned the ground frantically, spotted a concrete block half buried in weeds, and lifted it with both hands. The weight made his arms shake. He hadn't eaten in 2 days. But he swung it anyway, smashing it into the window with everything he had. The glass exploded inward with a sound like a gunshot. Marcus reached through the jagged opening, felt shards slice his forearm, ignored the blood, and unlocked the door from inside. He yanked it open, and a wave of suffocating heat rolled out, carrying with it the smell of sweat, fear, and something else. Something chemical and wrong that made his stomach turn. The girl was sobbing now, thrashing harder, her wrists bleeding where the zip ties cut into her skin. Marcus pulled out the shard of glass he always kept in his pocket, his only tool, used for opening boxes, cutting rope, defending himself when necessary, and sawed through the plastic restraints. They snapped. Her hands came free. She ripped the gag from her mouth and gasped for air like someone who'd been drowning. "We have to go," Marcus said urgently, his eyes darting to the empty warehouse lot around them. Whoever left her here would come back. They always came back. "Right now? Can you walk?" But she grabbed his arm with surprising strength, her small fingernails digging into his skin hard enough to leave marks. "My daddy," she choked out between gasps. "They took me because of my daddy. I don't care who your daddy is, we need to. Reaper." The word came out like she was speaking the name of God himself. "My daddy's name is Reaper. He's Hell's Angels." Every drop of blood in Marcus's body turned to ice water. Reaper, the name every street kid in Riverside knew better than to say out loud. The enforcer, the legend, the man who'd allegedly killed 3 rival gang members with his bare hands and walked away without a scratch. Parents used his name to scare their children. "Stay out of the industrial district, or Reaper will find you." And this little girl, with her tear-streaked face and bruised arms and eyes full of terror, was his daughter. "What's your name?" Marcus asked, already pulling her out of the van, his survival instincts screaming at him to move, move, move. "Lily, I'm Marcus. Stay close to me." That's when he heard it, the rumble of engines in the distance. Deep, powerful, multiple vehicles approaching fast. Marcus's stomach dropped. He grabbed Lily's hand and ran. They sprinted across the cracked asphalt lot toward the maze of abandoned warehouses Marcus had called home for the past 8 months. Behind them, tires screeched. Doors slammed. Voices shouted. "The van's open. She's gone. Spread out. Find her." Marcus pulled Lily through a gap in a chain-link fence he'd cut weeks ago, the one nobody else knew about. The metal scraped his shoulder, drawing fresh blood, but he didn't slow down. They ran down an alley choked with broken pallets, rotting trash bags, and shattered glass that crunched under their feet. Lily stumbled on a piece of concrete, and Marcus caught her, practically carrying her now as his lungs burned and his legs screamed for rest. "In here," he hissed, spotting the sheet of plywood he positioned over a basement window 2 months ago. He shoved it aside, pushed Lily through the opening first, then squeezed in after her, pulling the plywood back into place just as footsteps pounded into the alley above. They dropped into complete darkness, landing hard on a concrete floor 6 feet below. Marcus felt the impact jar his knees, but he bit back the pain. Above them, the footsteps stopped. "Check every building on this block. She's got a kid with her. They couldn't have gotten far." What if he already called the cops? "He's homeless, you idiot. Street rats don't call cops. Now move." Marcus pressed his hand firmly over Lily's mouth, feeling her rapid, panicked breathing against his palm. They sat in absolute silence, listening to boots scraping on pavement, men shouting to each other, searching the alley systematically. Marcus counted his own heartbeats, 63, 64, 65, while sweat dripped down his face and mixed with the blood still running from the cut on his arm. Finally, after what felt like an hour but was probably 5 minutes, the voices faded. The searchers moved to the next block. Marcus waited another full minute before he risked moving. He slowly pulled his hand away from Lily's mouth and reached for his phone. A broken smartphone with a cracked screen he'd found in a dumpster 3 weeks ago. It barely worked, but it still gave off enough light to see. He pressed the power button, and dim illumination filled the space. They were in an old maintenance room beneath a warehouse that had been closed since before Marcus was born. Concrete walls streaked with water damage. A massive rusted boiler in one corner. Pipes running along the ceiling. And a single metal door that led to a flooded tunnel system Marcus had explored once and decided was too dangerous to use as shelter. Lily's whole body was trembling violently now, shock setting in. In the pale phone light, Marcus could see the full extent of what they'd done to her. Bruises on both arms in the shape of fingerprints, rope burns around her ankles, dirt caked under her fingernails like she tried to claw her way out. But worse than the physical damage was the look in her eyes. Not just fear, something deeper, knowledge of something terrible. "Why did they take you?" Marcus asked softly, keeping his voice barely above a whisper. "Revenge," Lily said, the word coming out broken. "They said my daddy owes them. They said he killed their brother 2 weeks ago in a fight outside a bar in San Bernardino." Marcus nodded. That made sense in the brutal, twisted logic of gang warfare. Blood for blood. An eye for an eye. Take a man's daughter because he took someone's brother. But then Lily's fingers wrapped around his wrist, squeezing tight, and her next words made the entire basement feel like it was closing in. "But my daddy didn't do it, Marcus. I know who did." Her voice dropped to barely audible. "I saw it happen." Time seemed to stop. Marcus stared at her, his mind racing to process what she'd just said. "What do you mean you saw it?" 3 weeks ago, I snuck out of my room at night. I heard motorcycles pulling up, and I thought my daddy was home early from a run. I wanted to see him." Tears started spilling down her cheeks again, leaving clean tracks through the dirt. "But it wasn't my daddy. It was Viper. Uncle Viper. He was with 2 guys I'd never seen before, and they were dragging someone into the garage behind our house. The guy was fighting, trying to scream, but they had his mouth covered. Marcus's throat went dry. What happened? I hid behind the trash cans and watched through a crack in the garage door. Lily's voice became mechanical now, like she was describing something happening to someone else, somewhere far away. Viper made the guy kneel. He asked him questions about money, about territory. The guy kept saying he didn't know anything. And then Viper pulled out a gun and shot him. 3 times. Once in the chest. Twice in the head. The phone light flickered, threatening to die. Marcus's hand was shaking so badly he almost dropped it. After, Lily continued, Viper went through the dead guy's pockets. Took his wallet, his phone, his ring. He told the other men to dump the body on the east side where the Diablos hang out. He said, make it look like Reaper did this. Plant evidence. Let the Diablos come for him. Let them tear him apart. The pieces assembled themselves in Marcus's mind with horrifying clarity. Viper is my daddy's best friend since they were teenagers. Second in command of the Hells Angels. The only person my daddy trusts completely. Lily's voice cracked. And the people who kidnapped me don't work for the Diablos. They work for Viper. I heard them talking when they thought I was unconscious. This whole thing, the kidnapping, the threats, it's all Viper's plan to destroy my daddy and take over the club. Marcus felt like he'd been punched in the chest. This wasn't just a gang war. This was betrayal, conspiracy, murder. And Lily was the only living witness who could prove it, which meant Viper couldn't let her live. And now Marcus, a homeless 14-year-old nobody who'd spent 2 years invisible and forgotten, was the only person standing between this little girl and the men who would kill her without hesitation. We have to get you to your father, Marcus said, forcing his brain to work through the panic. Do you know where he is? The clubhouse, probably, but footsteps. Not above them this time. Below them, in the flooded tunnel. Marcus killed the phone light instantly, plunging them back into total darkness. The footsteps echoed off concrete, growing louder, more distinct. 2 people, maybe 3, moving deliberately, systematically, floor by floor. They'd figured out that Marcus would go to ground, would find a hiding spot only a street kid would know. They were hunting him with the patience of professionals. His broken phone vibrated in his hand, the screen flashing so bright in the darkness that both he and Lily flinched. A text message from an unknown number. The words glowed like a threat carved in light. I know you have her. Bring her to me at the old rail yard before midnight, or I tell the Hells Angels that you're the one who kidnapped Reaper's daughter. Every biker in Southern California will be hunting you by morning. You'll be dead by sunrise. Lily saw the message too. She looked up at Marcus with those haunted 10-year-old eyes that had already seen too much death, and he saw the question she was too terrified to speak. What happens now? The footsteps in the tunnel stopped directly below their position. Someone was listening, waiting. Subscribe now before it's too late. Comment where you're watching from while you still can. Marcus's mind raced through every possible escape route he'd mapped during his 8 months living in this forgotten corner of Riverside. The footsteps in the tunnel below had stopped completely, which was somehow worse than hearing them move. Silence meant whoever was down there was listening, waiting for them to panic, to make a sound, to give away their exact position. He couldn't risk using the phone light again. One flash of illumination would pinpoint them like a beacon in the darkness. He leaned close to Lily's ear, his breath barely stirring her hair, his whisper so quiet it was almost just shaped air. There's a ventilation shaft on the far wall. We crawl through it to the next building. Stay behind me. Don't make any sound. Not even breathing loud. Can you do that? Lily nodded against his shoulder, and he felt how badly she was trembling. The girl had been tied up in a suffocating van, nearly died from heat stroke, watched him fight to save her, and run for her life through industrial ruins. Most 10-year-olds would have fallen apart completely by now. But Lily was Reaper's daughter, and Marcus was beginning to understand that meant something different than ordinary. Marcus felt along the concrete wall with his fingertips, tracing the familiar path he'd memorized during sleepless nights when he'd explored every inch of this space looking for emergency exits. 23 steps to the corner. He counted each one in his head, then left, then down to floor level where the old air duct opened into the wall, its grate long since rusted away, and removed by Marcus weeks ago for exactly this kind of situation. Behind them, below them, a door creaked open on corroded hinges. The sound echoed through the maintenance room like a gunshot. Flashlight beams cut through the darkness of the flooded tunnel, visible through cracks in the floorboards above where Marcus and Lily crouched frozen. Check upstairs. Every room, every closet, every crawl space. I'll search down here. The voice was calm, professional, methodical. These weren't street thugs or desperate criminals. These were trained men who knew how to hunt people. Marcus found the vent opening with his fingers and pushed Lily toward it. Go. Crawl as fast as you can, but stay quiet. The metal will echo if you bump it too hard. I'm right behind you. She disappeared into the shaft without hesitation, and Marcus felt a flicker of admiration for this scared little girl who kept going even when everything must have felt hopeless. He followed immediately, his shoulders barely fitting through the narrow rectangular space. The metal was sharp where rust had eaten through the coating, scraping his back and drawing blood he couldn't afford to lose after already cutting his arm on the van window. Every movement felt impossibly loud in the enclosed space, his clothes rustling, his knees scraping metal, his breathing that seemed to echo like thunder. Behind him, he heard boots on stairs. Heavy, deliberate footsteps ascending to the maintenance room they'd just abandoned. Room's empty, but the dust is disturbed. Someone was here recently. Find them. The ventilation shaft ran for what felt like miles, but was probably only 30 feet, angling slightly upward before opening into the basement of the adjacent warehouse. Marcus emerged first into another pool of darkness, then reached back to help Lily down. She was breathing hard, struggling to stay quiet, her small hand gripping his with desperate strength. This building was even more deteriorated than the last. Sections of the floor above had collapsed inward, creating mountains of broken concrete and twisted rebar. But those same collapses had opened holes to the outside, letting in shafts of late afternoon sunlight that cut through the dust-choked air like golden spotlights. Beautiful and dangerous at the same time, because light meant visibility and visibility meant death. We can't stay in this area, Marcus whispered, his voice barely audible even inches from Lily's ear. They'll search every building within a mile radius. They have the manpower and the time. We need somewhere they won't think to look. Somewhere outside their search pattern. Where? Lily's voice was small, exhausted, running on fumes of adrenaline that would crash soon. Marcus knew exactly one place. The last place anyone would expect a homeless kid to voluntarily go. A place with people, witnesses, questions, and the kind of scrutiny Marcus had spent 2 years avoiding. The Mission Street Soup Kitchen. There's a woman there named Nora. She's helped me before when I was sick. She doesn't ask too many questions, and she knows how to keep secrets. Will she help us? I don't know, Marcus admitted, but she's the only chance we have. They moved through the warehouse ruins like ghosts, using the shadows and massive piles of debris for cover. Marcus led them out through a gap in the north wall where an entire section had collapsed, then through a series of alleys and side streets he'd mapped during 2 years of survival. He knew which alleys had dead ends, which had escape routes, which had cameras, which had residents who called the cops on sight. This knowledge, purchased with hunger and fear and countless close calls, was the only advantage he had. Every sound made his heart race and his muscles tense for flight. A car door slamming 3 blocks away, a dog barking at something unseen, the distant wail of a siren that might or might not be related to them. Twice they had to freeze in shadows as cars passed, Marcus holding his breath and counting seconds until it was safe to move again. The sun was setting by the time they reached Mission Street, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that would have been beautiful if Marcus had any capacity left to notice beauty. The soup kitchen operated out of an old church basement, its red door marked with a simple wooden cross and a hand-painted sign that read, "All welcome, no questions asked." Marcus had eaten there maybe a dozen times in 2 years, always uncomfortable with the concerned looks, the gentle questions about where he slept and whether he wanted help, the offers of resources he couldn't accept without risking getting pulled back into a foster system that had already failed him once. The volunteers meant well, but their help came with strings attached: social workers, case files, group homes where older kids stole your shoes and the staff didn't care. But today he had no choice. Lily's safety mattered more than his freedom. He pushed open the door. The smell of cooking food hit him immediately. Beans, rice, something with tomatoes and spices that made his empty stomach cramp with hunger he'd been successfully ignoring for 2 days. A handful of people sat at long tables eating quietly, not making eye contact with each other in that universal way of those who'd fallen through society's cracks. And there, behind the serving counter wearing a flour-dusted apron, was Nora. She was maybe 50, with gray-streaked brown hair pulled back in a practical bun and eyes that had seen enough suffering to never judge anyone for their circumstances. When she spotted Marcus, her expression shifted rapidly, surprise that he'd come during operating hours, concern at the blood on his clothes, and then alarm as she took in Lily's condition, the bruises, the tear-streaked face, the 1,000-yard stare of trauma. "Marcus." Nora came around the counter quickly, wiping her hands on her apron. "What happened?" "I need help." The words felt foreign in his mouth, wrong somehow, like admitting weakness he couldn't afford. "She needs help. Please." Nora didn't waste time with more questions. She simply nodded once, placed a hand on Lily's shoulder with infinite gentleness, and guided them both toward a back room away from the other guests. She locked the door behind them, shutting out the world for a precious moment. The room was small, storage mostly, with metal shelves holding industrial-sized cans of food and paper supplies. But there was also a cot in the corner, a small sink, and a first aid kit on the wall. Nora handed Lily a bottle of water and a clean blanket, waited until the girl had drunk half the bottle, then turned to Marcus with an expression that demanded truth. "Who is she?" Marcus took a breath. This was the moment that would determine everything. "Her name is Lily. She was kidnapped. I found her in a van behind the old warehouses on Industrial Boulevard, left to die in the heat. Her father is Reaper, Hell's Angels, and the men who took her are still hunting both of us right now. Like and subscribe if you want to see what happens next." Most people would have panicked at the mention of Reaper's name. Most people would have immediately called the police or thrown them out or done something that revealed they didn't understand the world Marcus had been surviving in. But Nora's face went very still, very calm, and her eyes took on a distant look that spoke of old memories and old pain. "I know who Reaper is," she said quietly. "You do?" "I was married to a Hell's Angels member for 11 years before he died in a highway accident outside of Barstow." Nora pulled a chair over and sat down slowly, like the weight of those memories made her physically heavy. "His name was Tackle. Stupid road name, but he wore it proud. I know how that world works. I know the codes, the rules, the way information travels faster than light through those networks." She looked at Lily with something like recognition. "Does your father know you're missing, honey?" Lily shook her head, her voice small and fragile. "He left yesterday morning for a run to Nevada. He's not supposed to be back until tomorrow afternoon. That timeline doesn't matter anymore," Nora said with certainty. "Word spreads like wildfire in that community. Brothers look out for each other's families. If you've been gone more than a few hours, someone noticed. Someone made calls. And your father knows. Which means he's already on his way back, and he's already tearing this entire city apart looking for you." Marcus felt a small surge of relief mixed with new fear. If Reaper was already searching, if they could just get word to him somehow, maybe this nightmare could end. But ending it meant facing Reaper himself. A man whose reputation alone kept grown criminals awake at night. "I have an emergency number," Nora continued, reading Marcus's thoughts in his expression. "A phone line that goes directly to the clubhouse answering service. It's for situations exactly like this, when someone needs urgent help and can't go through normal channels." She pulled out an old flip phone from her apron pocket, the kind nobody used anymore except people who needed to stay off the grid. "But Marcus, you need to understand something before I make this call. Once I dial this number, there's no going back. No changing your mind. The Hell's Angels will come here. Not just a few of them. All of them. Because this is Reaper's daughter, And there's no higher priority in that world than family. That's what we need, Marcus said, though his voice shook slightly. Is it? Nora's eyes were sharp, cutting through to the truth Marcus didn't want to face. Because when 500 bikers show up looking for someone, the whole neighborhood notices. Police notice. News cameras notice. And if the men hunting Lily are watching this area, monitoring places she might logically end up, they'll know exactly where she is within minutes. Marcus felt the trap closing around them from all sides. Staying hidden meant eventually getting caught or starving. Calling for help meant potentially leading Lily's hunters straight to her. Either way carried risks that could end in death. But at least with Reaper and the Hells Angels, they had firepower, protection, a chance at survival instead of just prolonged dying. Make the call, Marcus decided. Nora dialed. The conversation was brief, coded in language Marcus didn't fully understand but recognized as deliberate. This is Nora Chun calling on Tackle's line. I need immediate response, priority alpha. Reaper's package is safe at my location. Repeat, package is safe. Multiple hostiles in active pursuit. Need extraction now. When she hung up, her hand was shaking slightly. They'll be here in 20 minutes. Maybe less. Reaper's already in Riverside. He never left for Nevada. Someone tipped him off this morning that something was wrong. While they waited in that small room that smelled of canned vegetables and old paper, Nora cleaned Lily's cuts with gentle efficiency and brought them both bowls of soup that Marcus initially refused before Lily said, "Please eat. You saved my life. You need to stay strong." Marcus couldn't remember the last time someone had shown him kindness without expecting something in return. The simple bean soup tasted like the best meal of his entire life, warmth spreading through his empty stomach and momentarily pushing back the fog of exhaustion threatening to pull him under. Lily picked at hers, too anxious to eat more than a few bites. "My mama used to make soup," Lily said suddenly, her voice distant and dreamlike. "Before she died. She made this chicken soup with homemade noodles that took all day. She said good food takes time." Nora's hand stilled on the bandage she was wrapping around Lily's wrist. Something in the girl's tone had changed, darkened. "When did your mother pass, sweetheart?" 3 years ago. Car accident on Highway 60. Lily's voice was flat now, emotionless in the way children sound when they've repeated a painful story so many times it stops feeling real. That's what everyone said. Her brakes failed on a curve, and she went off a cliff, and the car burned before anyone could reach her. Marcus felt ice spread through his chest, a cold that had nothing to do with the temperature in the room. "But," Lily continued, "I heard my daddy crying one night about 6 months after. He was in his garage with Uncle Viper, and he was drinking whiskey and crying, which I'd never seen him do before. He said the police report was wrong. He said he'd taken Mama's car to a mechanic who confirmed the brake lines had been cut. He said someone murdered her and made it look like an accident." Nora had gone completely still, her eyes locked on Lily's face. "Did they ever find out who?" "No. Daddy said whoever did it was too careful. No evidence. No witnesses. No way to prove anything." Lily looked up, and her eyes held that terrible ancient knowledge that didn't belong in a 10-year-old's face. "But 2 weeks before she died, I heard Mama and Daddy fighting late at night. I snuck to the top of the stairs and listened. Mama said someone in the club was stealing money. She said she had proof, bank records, text messages, something. She said if Daddy didn't handle it immediately, she would go to the other club leaders herself." The pieces were connecting faster now in Marcus's mind, forming a picture more horrifying than anything he'd imagined. "Viper," he breathed. "My mama discovered what Uncle Viper was doing. Stealing from the club, setting up his own deals on the side behind my daddy's back, using club resources for personal profit." Lily's hands were shaking so badly she had to set down her soup bowl. And then 2 weeks later, her brakes failed on the highway, and she drove off a cliff going 70 miles an hour, and she burned alive, and everyone said it was just a tragic accident. Nora's face had gone pale as old paper. "Lily, does your father know you remember this conversation?" "I never told him. I was only 7. I didn't understand what it meant until later. And Viper doesn't know you heard." The sound of motorcycles cut through the evening air like chainsaws through silk. Not just a few bikes. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. The deep bass rumble of engines that shook windows in their frames and set off car alarms for blocks in every direction, announcing their arrival like rolling thunder. Marcus moved to the small window that looked out onto Mission Street and pulled back the edge of the curtain. His breath caught in his throat. The street was filling with bikers, wave after wave of them, all wearing the same leather vests with the same patch on the back, the winged death's head that marked them as Hell's Angels. They pulled up in tight formation, professional and coordinated like a military unit, bikes perfectly aligned in rows that spoke of discipline and brotherhood forged over decades. And at the very front, climbing off a massive black Harley that looked like it could crush cars, was a man who could only be Reaper. He was tall, broad-shouldered in a way that spoke of natural power rather than gym muscles, with a gray-streaked beard braided in two places and eyes that scanned the street like a predator searching for threats to eliminate. His leather vest bore more patches than anyone else. Chapter president, founding member, names and dates that told a story written in violence and loyalty. He moved toward the soup kitchen with 5 other bikers flanking him in protective formation, each one looking like they could tear apart a car with their bare hands if asked. Nora unlocked the door and stepped into the main dining room just as Reaper pushed through the red entrance door. The other soup kitchen guests had already fled, sensing danger with the instincts of people who'd survived by reading situations quickly. The basement was empty now except for Marcus, Lily, Nora, and the 6 bikers who filled the space like they owned it. Reaper's eyes found Lily immediately, scanning past everyone else like they didn't exist. "Baby girl. Daddy." Lily ran to him, and he caught her mid-stride, lifting her off her feet like she weighed absolutely nothing, his face buried in her hair. His massive shoulders shook, and Marcus realized with shock that this legendary enforcer, this man whose name people whispered in fear, was crying. After a long moment that felt frozen in time, Reaper set Lily down gently, running his hands over her arms and face, checking for injuries with desperate thoroughness. Then he turned to Marcus. His expression was unreadable, gratitude mixed with something else Marcus couldn't identify. Suspicion maybe, or recognition. Reaper stepped closer, his eyes scanning Marcus's face with an intensity that made Marcus want to back away, but couldn't because his legs wouldn't move. Then Reaper's gaze dropped to Marcus's left forearm, to the long white scar that ran from elbow to wrist, the one Marcus had carried for as long as he could remember. The scar from a broken window when he was 7, when his mother had grabbed him in the middle of the night, and they'd escaped through a shattered sliding glass door and never gone back. Reaper's face went completely white, all the color draining like someone had opened a valve. His hand shot out and grabbed Marcus's arm, not roughly but with trembling urgency, pulling it into the light from the overhead fixture. He stared at the scar like it was a ghost materialized from his worst nightmares. "Where did you get this?" Reaper's voice was barely controlled, shaking on every syllable. "I don't know. I've had it since I was little. My mom said it was from a broken window." Reaper pulled out his phone with shaking hands, fingers fumbling on the screen like he'd forgotten how it worked, and swiped to his photos. He scrolled quickly, desperately, then turned the screen toward Marcus. The image showed a small boy, maybe 6 or 7 years old, with dark hair and scared dark eyes and a serious expression. The boy was shirtless, and on his left arm, running from elbow to wrist, was an identical scar. "Where did you get that scar?" Reaper repeated, his voice cracking completely now. "I told you. A broken window when I was 7. My mom and I were running from." Marcus stopped, his throat closing around words he'd never spoken aloud. His mother, Elise. The one who died of an overdose in a motel bathroom 2 years ago. The one who'd spent Marcus's entire childhood running from something, moving from city to city every few months, never staying anywhere long enough for Marcus to make friends or put down roots or feel safe. Always looking over her shoulder, always jumping at loud noises, always afraid of something she never explained. Reaper's eyes were filling with tears. "What was your mother's name?" "Elise. Elise Parker." The name hit Reaper like a physical bullet. He staggered backward, and one of his men caught him before he could fall. No, She told me you were dead. The fire. She said you died in the fire when you were 7, and I believed her, and I. What fire? Marcus's heart was pounding so hard his vision started to blur. What are you talking about? Reaper's voice was barely a whisper, broken and raw. Marcus. That's your name? Your name is Marcus? Yes. Marcus James. The middle name Marcus's mother had only used when she was terrified or drunk or both. The name on his birth certificate that he'd seen exactly once before the system lost track of him. The name he'd never told anyone in Riverside. How do you know that? Reaper pulled off his leather vest with trembling hands that seemed unable to work properly. The vest that meant everything to him, that represented his identity and rank and history. He turned around slowly. On his back, spanning his shoulder blades in a massive tattoo that must have taken days to complete, were 2 names written in elegant script surrounded by flames and angels and chains. Elise. Marcus. I'm your father. Marcus couldn't breathe. The words Reaper had just spoken hung in the air like smoke from a fire that was burning Marcus's entire understanding of his life to the ground. He stared at the tattoo, at his own name inked permanently into this stranger's skin, and felt reality fracturing around the edges. No. The word came out weak, unconvincing even to his own ears. That's not possible. My father died before I was born. My mom told me. Your mother lied to protect you. Reaper's voice was thick with emotion, years of buried pain surfacing all at once. Elise was my girlfriend 14 years ago. We lived together. We were planning to get married. She was 7 months pregnant with you when Viper. His voice broke completely. When Viper told me there'd been a fire at a safe house where I'd sent her to hide. He said you both died. He showed me burned remains. He helped me plan the funeral. He held me while I cried. And the entire time, he was the reason you were gone. Marcus's legs gave out. He sat down hard on the concrete floor, his mind refusing to process what he was hearing. Lily moved closer to him, her small hand finding his, and that touch somehow anchored him enough to keep listening. Why? Marcus whispered. Why would he do that? Because I was about to become president of the Riverside chapter, and Viper wanted that position for himself. Reaper crouched down to Marcus's eye level, his weathered face inches away. He couldn't challenge me directly. I had too much support from the other brothers. But he could threaten the people I loved. He went to your mother in secret and told her that if she didn't disappear with you immediately, he'd kill you both and make it look like rival gang retaliation. He gave her money, a fake ID, and 24 hours to vanish. And she left. Marcus felt anger rising through the shock. She just ran. She saved your life. Reaper's eyes were fierce now, defensive. Elise knew Viper wasn't bluffing. She'd seen what he was capable of. So she disappeared completely, changed her name, moved every few months to stay ahead of anyone who might be looking. And she told me you were both dead, so I'd stop searching, stop asking questions, stop doing anything that might lead Viper to discover you were still alive. Nora had been standing silently by the door, but now she spoke quietly. Elise came through here about 3 years ago, Marcus. Just once. She didn't give me her name, but I remember her. She asked me about resources for families trying to disappear. I gave her information on underground networks, places that don't ask questions. She had a teenage boy with her. You, I realize now. She looked terrified. Marcus remembered that day vaguely. His mother had been particularly paranoid, jumping at shadows, insisting they needed to move again even though they'd only been in Riverside for 2 months. A week later, she was dead. What happened to her? Reaper asked, though his expression suggested he already knew the answer wouldn't be good. Overdose. Marcus's voice was flat. 2 years ago. Heroin in a motel bathroom. I found her. The pain that crossed Reaper's face was raw and immediate. She didn't use when I knew her. Not ever. She was clean, healthy, strong. Running changes people, Marcus said bitterly. Being terrified every day changes people. Watching your back for threats that never stop coming changes people. Lily's hand tightened on Marcus's. You're my brother, she said softly, testing the words. I have a brother. Marcus looked at her. This 10-year-old girl who'd been through her own nightmare, who'd lost her mother to murder disguised as accident, who'd witnessed a killing and been kidnapped because of it. Half-siblings, connected by blood and by trauma, and by a man named Viper, who'd destroyed both their families for power. Yeah, Marcus said finally. I guess you do. Reaper stood, his expression hardening from grief into something far more dangerous. Viper doesn't know you exist, Marcus. He thinks the job he ordered 14 years ago was completed, which means we have an advantage he's not expecting. What job? One of the other bikers spoke up, a massive man with a shaved head and scars across his knuckles. You saying Viper's been playing you for 14 years? I'm saying Viper murdered my son's mother, kidnapped my daughter, framed me for killing a Diablo's member, and has been systematically positioning himself to take over this chapter through betrayal and murder. Reaper's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. And I'm saying we're going to the clubhouse right now, calling a full member meeting, and exposing every single thing he's done. He'll deny it, another biker said. It's your word against his. He's second in command. Brothers trust him. Not when they hear Lily's testimony, Reaper countered. Not when I show them the evidence I've been quietly gathering for 3 years. Ever since my wife's brakes mysteriously failed and the police report didn't match what my personal mechanic found. I've been watching Viper, documenting his movements, tracking discrepancies in club finances. I just didn't have enough to prove anything until now. Marcus felt the momentum building, the sense of moving from hiding and running toward confrontation and resolution. But something nagged at him, some survival instinct honed by 2 years on the streets. If you've been investigating him, wouldn't he know? Wouldn't he have people watching you? Reaper's expression shifted slightly. Respect mixed with acknowledgement. Smart kid. Yes, he probably knows I suspect something. Which means bringing Lily to the clubhouse is exactly what he'd expect me to do. Then we're walking into a trap, Marcus said. No, we're walking into our fortress surrounded by 500 brothers who've sworn oaths to protect each other's families. Reaper pulled out his phone. I'm calling a lockdown. Nobody gets in or out without being verified. Full security protocol. By the time we arrive, that clubhouse will be the safest location in California. Like and subscribe before you miss what happens next. 20 minutes later, Marcus found himself on the back of a motorcycle for the first time in his life, arms wrapped around the waist of a biker named Crusher, roaring through Riverside streets as part of a convoy that looked like an invading army. Lily rode with Reaper at the front, and Nora had agreed to stay behind and contact them if anyone came looking. The Hells Angels clubhouse was a fortified compound on the east side of the city, high walls topped with cameras, reinforced gates, and a parking lot that could hold 200 motorcycles easily. By the time they arrived, it was already filled with bikes, and more were pulling in every minute. Word had spread through the network. Emergency meeting, all members required, priority alpha. Inside, the main room was massive. Pool tables, a bar that stretched the length of one wall, leather couches, and walls covered with photographs documenting decades of brotherhood. Marcus had never been anywhere that felt so much like a fortress and a home at the same time. Bikers filled every available space, their conversations a low rumble of speculation and concern. When Reaper walked in with Lily and Marcus, the room fell silent. Brothers, Reaper's voice carried to every corner. Most of you know my daughter Lily was taken yesterday. This is Marcus. He put his hand on Marcus's shoulder, and the weight of it felt like an anchor. My son, who I thought died 14 years ago, but who saved Lily's life today. And I'm about to tell you something that's going to change everything you think you know about this club. The door opened behind them. Viper walked in. He was shorter than Marcus expected, lean and wiry rather than massive, with cold blue eyes and a smile that didn't reach past his lips. He looked concerned, brotherly, worried, the perfect performance of a loyal second-in-command arriving to help in a crisis. Thank God, Viper said, moving toward Lily with arms extended. Brother, I got your message and came as fast as I could. Lily, sweetheart, are you okay? Lily pressed closer to Reaper, and Marcus saw Viper's eyes register that reaction, process it, calculate it. Then Viper's gaze slid to Marcus, and something changed in his expression. Just for a fraction of a second, recognition, confusion, and then something that looked like calculation masking itself as concern. "Who's this?" Viper asked. "My son," Reaper said simply. Viper's face went carefully blank. "Your son died in a fire when? When you told me he died." Reaper's voice was cold as winter steel. "When you showed me burned remains that were probably stolen from a morgue. When you lied to my face for 14 years. The room's energy shifted instantly. 500 bikers sensing conflict, choosing sides with their body language and positioning. Viper's phone buzzed. He pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and his expression stayed perfectly controlled. "Brother, I don't know what you've been told, but we should talk about this privately." "We're talking about it right here, right now, in front of everyone," Reaper said. "Starting with how you murdered my wife 3 years ago. How you framed me for killing a Diablo's member. How you kidnapped my daughter. How you've been stealing from this club and setting up side deals for years." Viper's mask started to crack. His smile stayed in place, but his eyes went dead and cold. "That's a serious accusation to make without proof. Lily is my proof. She saw you kill that Diablo's member. She heard everything." Viper looked at Lily then, really looked at her, and Marcus saw the exact moment when the man decided she had to die. It was there in his eyes, cold, calculating certainty. "I see," Viper said quietly. He raised his phone to his ear. "Handle it." The explosion that rocked the front of the building came 3 seconds later. The explosion tore through the front entrance of the clubhouse with a deafening roar that shattered windows and knocked Marcus off his feet. He hit the ground hard, his ears ringing, his vision blurred by dust and smoke. Around him, chaos erupted instantly, bikers shouting, grabbing weapons from hidden compartments, overturning tables for cover. Someone was screaming. Glass continued to fall, tinkling like deadly rain. Marcus's first thought was Lily. He crawled through the debris, ignoring the pain shooting through his scraped palms, and found her pressed against the wall near the bar where Reaper had shoved her in the split second before impact. She was conscious, terrified, but alive. "Stay down." Marcus covered her with his own body as a second explosion rocked the building, this one from the side entrance. The walls shook, but held. Reinforced concrete built specifically to withstand exactly this kind of assault. The Hells Angels hadn't built a clubhouse. They'd built a fortress. But fortresses could still be breached. Gunfire erupted from outside. Automatic weapons, the rapid staccato of multiple shooters laying down covering fire. Bullets punched through what remained of the front windows, splintering wood, ricocheting off metal support beams. Marcus heard someone grunt in pain, heard the wet thump of a body hitting the floor. Return fire. Defensive positions. Reaper's voice cut through the chaos with absolute authority. He was already moving, a pistol in each hand, coordinating his people with the precision of someone who'd survived situations like this before. "Nobody leaves cover. They want us to panic and run. Don't give them the satisfaction." Marcus risked a glance over the overturned pool table he and Lily were sheltering behind. Through the smoke and dust, he could see figures moving outside. At least a dozen men dressed in black tactical gear, faces covered, weapons raised. Not bikers. Professional mercenaries. Viper hadn't hired a rival gang. He'd hired killers. "This is Viper's play," Reaper shouted to the room. "He's trying to eliminate everyone who knows the truth. We hold this position, we survive, and we make him pay." One of the bikers near Marcus, an older man with gray hair and a chest covered in tattoos, was bleeding from a shoulder wound. He'd been hit in the initial explosion, shrapnel embedded in his flesh, but he was still conscious, still trying to move to a better defensive position. Marcus made a decision born from 2 years of survival instincts. He grabbed the man under his good arm and half-dragged, half-carried him behind the bar where the concrete walls were thicker. The biker was easily twice Marcus's weight, but adrenaline and desperation gave Marcus strength he didn't know he possessed. "I got you," Marcus grunted, lowering the man to the floor. "Just stay here." The biker looked at Marcus with something between shock and respect. "You're Reaper's kid?" "Apparently. Kid's got balls," the biker said to nobody in particular, then pressed his hand against his bleeding shoulder and started returning fire through a gap in the bar. Outside, the attackers were trying to advance, using the destroyed entrance as a breach point. But they hadn't counted on the level of resistance they'd encounter. The Hells Angels weren't just a motorcycle club. They were combat veterans, ex-military, men who'd survived wars in countries most people couldn't find on a map. They fought with coordinated discipline, covering each other's positions, conserving ammunition, making every shot count. Marcus spotted Viper then, pressed against the far wall near a side exit, his phone still in his hand. He wasn't fighting, wasn't helping defend the clubhouse. He was watching, calculating, waiting for the perfect moment to slip away in the chaos. Their eyes met across the smoke-filled room, and Viper smiled. It was the coldest thing Marcus had ever seen, a predator's smile, empty of anything human. Then Viper turned and disappeared through the side door into the back corridors of the compound. "He's running," Marcus shouted, but his voice was lost in the gunfire. The firefight lasted another 8 minutes that felt like 8 hours. The attackers tried twice more to breach the clubhouse, and twice they were driven back by concentrated fire from the bikers inside. Finally, sirens began wailing in the distance, police responding to reports of explosions and automatic weapons fire. The attackers melted away into the industrial district, professionals who knew when to retreat, leaving behind 3 bodies in tactical gear and a clubhouse that looked like a war zone. The silence after the gun stopped was almost worse than the noise. Marcus's ears were still ringing, his hands still shaking from adrenaline. Around him, bikers were checking on each other, assessing injuries, counting their people. For wounded, none critically. They'd been lucky. Reaper appeared through the smoke, his face grim, checking on Lily first, and then Marcus. "You did good, son. Real good. Pulling Crusher to safety like that. He won't forget it." The biker Marcus had saved raised his good hand in acknowledgement from behind the bar. "Kid's family now," he said simply, and several others nodded in agreement. But there was no time for celebration. Reaper's phone buzzed with an incoming message. He looked at the screen, and his face went completely white. "What is it?" Marcus asked. Reaper didn't answer. He just turned the phone so Marcus could see. It was a video message from Viper. The footage showed a safe in what looked like a hotel room, the door hanging open. Inside were stacks of documents, USB drives, and what looked like bags of white powder. Viper's voice played over the video. "Funny what you find when you know where to look, brother. Financial records showing you've been skimming club money for 5 years. Text messages between you and Diablo's leadership discussing territory arrangements. And best of all, the camera zoomed in on the drugs. Enough heroin to put you away for life. All with your fingerprints conveniently all over the bags. Like and subscribe. Don't miss how this ends." The video continued. "Here's how this works, Reaper. You step down as president tonight. You leave California by morning. You never come back. Do that, and these files stay buried. Refuse, and I send everything to the DEA, the FBI, and every news outlet in the state. You'll die in prison, and I'll take care of your daughter personally. She'll call me daddy within a year." The video ended with Viper's cold smile. Marcus felt rage building in his chest, hot and consuming. "It's all fake. All of it. Manufactured evidence." "Doesn't matter," Reaper said quietly. "Fake evidence can destroy you just as effectively as real evidence." He's got documentation, physical items, digital trails. It would take months to prove it's fabricated, and by then the damage would be done. The club would disown me. The feds would arrest me, and Lily would be alone. So what do we do? Reaper looked at his daughter, at his son, at the destroyed clubhouse around them. "We find Viper before he can release any of that information. We end this tonight." "I know where he is," Marcus said suddenly. The words came out before he'd fully processed the thought, but now that he'd said them, he realized they were true. "What?" "During the attack, I heard 2 of those mercenaries talking. They didn't know I was behind the bar with Crusher. One of them said, 'Once this is done, we extract to the plant.' The other one said, 'The old meatpacking place by the docks?' And the first one said, 'Yeah, boss is waiting there.'" Reaper grabbed Marcus by both shoulders. "You're sure?" "You heard this clearly." "I'm sure. Hope and determination flashed across Reaper's face. He turned to the other bikers. Mount up. Full crew. We're going to the waterfront, and we're ending Viper tonight. But as the bikers started moving, as they began checking weapons and preparing for what would effectively be a war, Marcus heard a sound that made his blood run cold. Lily was coughing, not just a small cough from smoke inhalation. Deep, wheezing, gasping coughs that sounded like she was trying to breathe through a straw. Lily. Reaper was at her side instantly. She tried to speak, but couldn't get enough air. Her lips were turning blue. She clawed at her throat, her chest heaving with the effort to pull oxygen into lungs that were closing off. Asthma, Reaper said, panic breaking through his controlled exterior. She has severe asthma. The smoke from the explosions triggered an attack. He spun around, searching. Where's her inhaler? Lily, where's your inhaler? My backpack. She gasped. At home. Get an ambulance here now. Reaper shouted. Cops are already on their way, Crusher said. Ambulance will be with them. 5 minutes maybe. She doesn't have 5 minutes. Reaper's voice cracked completely. Marcus looked at his sister. His sister, that word still feeling strange, and right at the same time, struggling to breathe, her small body fighting a battle it was losing. Then he looked at his father, torn between saving his daughter and stopping the man who destroyed their family. The hospital is 8 blocks away, Marcus said. We could get her there faster than waiting for an ambulance. Viper's people will be watching the hospitals, Reaper said. The moment we leave this compound with Lily, they'll intercept us. She'll be vulnerable, exposed. Then I stay with her, Marcus said. You take your crew and go after Viper. I'll protect Lily. I'll get her to the hospital and keep her safe until you come back. Reaper looked between his 2 children, the daughter who was suffocating, the son he'd just found after 14 years of thinking he was dead. An impossible choice. Divide his attention and risk losing both, or choose one and potentially sacrifice the other. Lily's breathing was getting worse. Her eyes were starting to roll back. They were running out of time. Marcus, Reaper said, his voice breaking. I just got you back. I can't lose you again. You won't. Marcus tried to sound confident, tried to sound like he knew what he was doing instead of a terrified 14-year-old who'd been homeless yesterday. I've survived 2 years on these streets. I know how to stay invisible. I know back routes to the hospital that nobody watches. I can do this. Lily collapsed. Lily collapsed into Reaper's arms, her small body going limp, her breathing reduced to shallow, desperate gasps that barely moved her chest. Marcus watched his father's face transform from hardened warrior to terrified parent in the span of a heartbeat. And in that moment, he understood that love and fear were 2 sides of the same coin. We're not waiting, Marcus said, making the decision for both of them. Crusher, give me your keys. The older biker didn't hesitate. He tossed Marcus a set of keys attached to a leather fob. Black pickup truck, 3rd row in the lot. Tanks full. Reaper lifted Lily carefully, cradling her against his chest as he moved toward the back exit. I'm taking her to Riverside Memorial. It's the closest. No. Marcus blocked his path, drawing on every ounce of street knowledge he possessed. That's exactly where Viper's people will be watching. They'll have someone in the ER, maybe corrupt cops in the parking lot. The moment you walk in with her, they'll know. Then where? Reaper's voice was desperate, a father watching his daughter suffocate in real time. St. Catherine's Medical Center on the north side. It's farther, but it's smaller, less obvious. More importantly, they have a back entrance through the delivery bay that I've used before when I needed to get warm during winter. Marcus had spent a night in that loading dock 6 months ago, had watched ambulances and supply trucks come and go, had memorized the security camera blind spots, because that's what you did when survival meant knowing every exit. I can get her in without anyone seeing us. Reaper stared at Marcus for 3 seconds that felt like an eternity, weighing options that all carried death. Then he made his choice. Take her. Keep her alive. I'm going after Viper. He handed Lily to Marcus, and the weight of her, the physical reality of his sister's life in his hands, made Marcus's knees almost buckle. She was so light, too light, and her breathing sounded like whined through broken glass. I'll bring her back safe, Marcus promised. I swear it. I know you will, son. Reaper's hand gripped Marcus's shoulder one last time. A connection between father and son forged in blood and crisis. Because you're my boy, and my blood doesn't quit. Marcus ran. He carried Lily through the back corridors of the clubhouse, past storage rooms and armories and private quarters, out through a rear exit that opened onto the parking lot. Police sirens were getting closer, red and blue lights already visible 2 blocks away. But Marcus moved in the opposite direction, using parked motorcycles for cover. Crusher's pickup truck was massive, black with chrome details, and a rebel flag sticker Marcus pretended not to see. He yanked open the passenger door, laid Lily across the bench seat, and sprinted around to the driver's side. The engine roared to life with a power Marcus could feel in his chest. He'd never actually driven a car before. Not legally, but he'd hot-wired 3 vehicles during his 2 years on the streets, twice to sleep in during dangerous nights, once to move it from a spot where he'd been hiding. He knew the basics. Gas, brake, steering wheel. How hard could it be? Very hard, as it turned out. The truck lurched forward, Marcus overcorrecting and nearly sideswiping a motorcycle before he got control. But then muscle memory from watching hundreds of drivers kicked in, and he managed to navigate out of the parking lot without crashing. Lily's breathing was getting worse. Marcus drove with one hand, the other on her chest, feeling the desperate struggle of her lungs. Stay with me, Lily. Just stay with me. 5 minutes. You can do 5 minutes. He took side streets, avoiding main roads where police would be converging on the clubhouse. The truck was conspicuous, loud, large, impossible to miss, but speed mattered more than stealth right now. He ran 2 red lights, praying no cops were nearby to notice. St. Catherine's Medical Center appeared ahead, a 5-story building with a lit emergency sign visible from blocks away. But Marcus drove past the front entrance, past the ambulance bay, around to the back where delivery trucks unloaded supplies. Just like he remembered, the loading dock gate was open, a truck mid-delivery with its back doors open and nobody watching. Marcus parked, lifted Lily. She was barely conscious now, her lips blue, her eyes unfocused, and carried her toward the service entrance. A security camera pointed at the door, but Marcus knew from months of observation that it had a blind spot on the left side where shadows from the building created a dark pocket. He kicked the door. Once, twice, 3 times until it flew open. Inside, he was in a service corridor that smelled of disinfectant and industrial cleaner. He could hear voices, machines beeping, the general chaos of a hospital at night. He moved toward those sounds, toward help, carrying his sister like she was made of glass. A nurse turned a corner and nearly collided with him. She was young, maybe 30, with tired eyes that went wide when she saw Lily. Severe asthma attack, Marcus gasped. She needs help now. The nurse's professionalism kicked in instantly. This way? How long has she been like this? 10 minutes. Maybe more. They rushed through hallways, the nurse shouting orders that brought more medical staff running. They reached a treatment room, and suddenly Lily was surrounded by doctors and nurses, hands moving with practiced efficiency, someone calling for an oxygen mask, someone else prepping an injection. Marcus backed against the wall, his heart pounding, watching them work. Within 30 seconds, they had Lily on oxygen. Within a minute, they'd administered medication. And within 2 minutes, her breathing started to improve, still labored, still concerning, but no longer the sound of someone dying. She's stabilizing, one of the doctors said. Good call getting her here when you did. 5 more minutes, and we'd be talking about brain damage. Marcus slid down the wall and sat on the floor, legs unable to support him anymore. He'd done it. Lily was alive. That's when he noticed the first nurse, the one who'd helped him initially, stepping into the hallway and pulling out her phone. She was making a call, her voice low, her body language furtive. Marcus's street instincts screamed warning. He was on his feet immediately, moving to the doorway, straining to hear. Yeah, he just brought her in. North Side, St. Catherine's, treatment room 4. The boy's still here. No, he's alone. Okay, 10 minutes. Marcus's blood turned to ice. Viper had people everywhere. The nurse was on his payroll. He had maybe 8 minutes before whoever she'd called arrived to finish what the attack on the clubhouse had started. 8 minutes to get Lily out of this hospital and somewhere truly safe. But Lily was still receiving treatment, still connected to monitors and oxygen. He couldn't just grab her and run without killing her himself. Marcus made a decision born from pure desperation. He walked calmly to the treatment room, caught the eye of the doctor who'd stabilized Lily, and said quietly, "That nurse in the hallway just called someone and told them we're here. We're in danger. I need to move my sister now." The doctor looked at him like he was crazy. "Son, she can't be moved. She needs to be alive in 10 minutes when the men who kidnapped her show up to finish the job." Marcus's voice carried absolute conviction. "I can take her, or you can explain to the police why you let a 10-year-old girl get murdered in your ER. Your choice." Something in Marcus's eyes must have convinced him, because the doctor's expression changed. "Give me 2 minutes." Those 2 minutes felt like 2 years. But the doctor worked fast, disconnecting non-essential monitors, setting up a portable oxygen tank, scribbling notes on paperwork that Marcus didn't understand. Finally, he helped Marcus lift Lily onto a wheelchair, the oxygen tank secured beside her. "Take the service elevator to the basement," the doctor said quietly. "Exit through the morgue loading area. And kid, whatever you're mixed up in, be careful." Marcus didn't waste time responding. He pushed the wheelchair toward the service elevator the doctor had indicated, moving as fast as he dared without jostling Lily too much. She was conscious now, her breathing easier with the oxygen, but her eyes were heavy with exhaustion and medication. "Marcus." Her voice was small through the oxygen mask. "I got you. We're leaving." They reached the basement, navigated through corridors that smelled of death and formaldehyde, and emerged into a loading area where hearses picked up bodies. Marcus's hot-wired pickup truck was useless now, compromised, too recognizable. But there was another vehicle here, a small sedan with keys hanging in the ignition, probably belonging to a morgue worker on shift. Marcus sent a silent apology to whoever owned it and put Lily in the passenger seat. He drove, not toward safety. There was no safety while Viper was free. He drove toward the waterfront, toward the old meatpacking plant, toward where he knew Reaper was facing the man who destroyed their family. Like and subscribe. You need to see how this ends. 20 minutes later, Marcus pulled up to the abandoned industrial complex near the docks. The meatpacking plant loomed against the night sky, a skeleton of rust and broken windows. And in the gravel lot out front, he could see them. Reaper stood in a circle of light from a single working street lamp, surrounded by 5 other Hell's Angels. Facing them were Viper and a dozen men, not bikers, but professionals in tactical gear, the kind of mercenaries who killed for money and asked no questions. Marcus was too late to prevent the confrontation, but maybe he could tip the scales. He killed the sedan's engine and turned to Lily. "Stay here. Lock the doors. If anything happens to me, you drive away and you don't look back." Marcus no, but he was already moving, circling around the building, using shadows and rusted equipment for cover. He reached a side entrance, a door hanging off broken hinges, and slipped inside. The plant's interior was a nightmare of dangling chains, rusted hooks, and catwalks suspended over processing floors 3 stories below. Marcus climbed, using skills learned from urban exploration and finding the highest places to sleep where nobody could reach him. He reached a catwalk that overlooked the main floor where Reaper and Viper faced off. "You really think you can just walk away from this?" Viper was saying, his voice echoing off concrete walls. "You're outnumbered, outgunned, and I still have all the evidence I need to destroy you. Last chance, Reaper. Walk away now, or die here." "I'm not going anywhere," Reaper said. "Not until everyone knows what you are. Not until you pay for my wife, for my son, for my daughter, for every brother you betrayed." Viper smiled that cold, dead smile. "Then you die? All of you." His men raised their weapons. Marcus grabbed the chain next to him, massive, industrial, designed to move sides of beef through the processing line. He yanked it free from its moorings, and 300 pounds of iron came crashing down onto the floor between the 2 groups. The distraction lasted only seconds, but seconds were enough. The Hell's Angels moved as one, trained instincts taking over, using the chaos to reach cover. Gunfire erupted, muzzle flashes lighting up the darkness like lightning. But they were still outnumbered, still losing, until the sound of engines filled the night. Not a dozen motorcycles, not 50, 500. The Hell's Angels arrived like a biblical plague, pouring into the industrial complex from every direction, surrounding the building with an army that made Viper's mercenaries look like children playing soldier. They didn't fire immediately. They just formed a wall of leather and steel and brotherhood that made it clear there would be no escape. Viper's men dropped their weapons. It was over. Reaper emerged from cover, walking toward Viper with murderous intent. You were my brother, my friend. And you took everything from me. I did what I had to do for power, Viper said, all pretense gone now. In this world, you're either the king or you're nothing. Then you're nothing. The authorities arrived within the hour, real police, federal agents, investigators who'd apparently been building a case against Viper for years. They took him into custody along with his mercenaries, seizing his phone with all its evidence of corruption, murder, and conspiracy. Lily's testimony, given to federal prosecutors in a hospital room with Reaper holding her hand, sealed Viper's fate. He'd spend the rest of his life in prison for murder, kidnapping, racketeering, and crimes that carried sentences measured in lifetimes. At the Hells Angels clubhouse 3 days later, partially rebuilt, still damaged but functional, the club held a vote. Marcus stood in the center of the main room while 500 bikers watched. This kid saved my daughter's life, Reaper said. He's my blood. He's proven himself loyal, brave, and worthy. I propose we make him an honorary member. All in favor. The roar of approval shook the walls. They gave Marcus a vest with his own patch, a place to sleep, a family he'd never expected. And for the first time in 2 years, Marcus felt like he belonged somewhere. But as the celebration began, as brothers clapped him on the back and welcomed him home, a black SUV pulled up outside. 2 federal agents stepped out. A woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a man with gray hair and the bearing of someone who'd spent decades in dangerous places. They asked for Marcus specifically. Reaper tensed, protective, but the woman raised her hand peacefully. We're not here to cause trouble. We just want to talk to your son. They sat in a side room, Marcus flanked by Reaper, while the agents laid out an offer that sounded like something from a movie. We've been investigating Viper and his criminal network for 3 years, the woman said. He had connections we still don't fully understand. Operations were still unraveling. And we need someone on the inside of these communities. Someone the criminals would never suspect. Someone invisible. You want me to be a spy? Marcus said flatly. We want you to be an asset, the man corrected. You're 14, homeless until recently. With street knowledge most of our agents take years to develop. You blend in where we stand out. You see things we miss. You saved a little girl's life using nothing but courage and quick thinking. That's the kind of person we need. Marcus looked at Reaper, at this father he'd just found. What do you think? I think, Reaper said slowly, that I can't tell you what to do. You've been making your own decisions for 2 years. You've earned the right to choose your own path. He paused. But I also think that whatever you choose, you're not alone anymore. You've got family now. We've got your back. The female agent handed Marcus a card with nothing but a phone number printed on it. Think about it. No pressure. But Marcus, you have a gift for survival that most people never develop. You could save a lot of lives, including your own. She stood to leave, then turned back. Oh, and one more thing. We'd make sure you finish school. Get your GED. Maybe even college eventually, if you want it. This isn't just about using you. It's about giving you a future. After they left, Marcus sat in the quiet room holding that card, the weight of possibility pressing down on him. Lily appeared in the doorway, healthy now, smiling. Are you going to do it? I don't know, Marcus admitted. What do you think? She walked over and hugged him. This little sister he'd almost died protecting. I think you're going to do something amazing. Because that's who you are. Marcus looked at the phone number on the card, at his father standing in the doorway, at his sister who believed in him, at the vest with his patch hanging on the back of a chair. 2 weeks ago, he'd been nobody. Invisible. Forgotten. Alone. Now he was someone's son, someone's brother, someone who mattered. And somehow, that terrified him more than anything he'd faced in the abandoned warehouses. The phone number on the card seemed to pulse with possibility, with danger, with a future that could go 1,000 different directions. Marcus tucked the card into his pocket and smiled. His new life was just beginning.